Welcome everybody to my show, Mid-Rock Crisis, a show that tries to save rock one band at a time. Did you ever hear that expression? They're so bad that they're good. That does not apply to this next band. This is a great band. The Modern Lovers. They should be in the Hall of Fame. Jonathan Richman formed this band in 1970 with bassist Ernie Brooks, future Cars drummer David Robinson, and future keyboardist for the Talking Heads Jerry Harrison. Richman was a fan of the Velvet Underground, which was active before the punk rock heyday beginning in 1975. Richmond saw the benefit of the Velvet's artful self-expression without the technical expertise that was a huge factor in the early 70s music. Now, the Modern Lovers were perhaps one step closer to full punk rock, certainly to qualify as proto-punk, as punk was a forerunner of new wave, alt, and indie rock in later decades. Jonathan Richman has much to answer for, even if his topical songs about sex, growing up in suburban Massachusetts, and gratitude to be a citizen of the USA notwithstanding. After the first Modern Lovers disbanded, Richman kept the name and formed several new backing bands. Some of these songs veered toward folk rock. You get a little older, you get a little quieter. In Natick, Massachusetts, which was a suburb of Boston, Richman first played at local venues in 1967, the first version of the Modern Lovers played on the same bill with the Sidewinders in 1970. Examples of Lovers songs then were Roadrunner, She Cracked, and Hospital. Richman wore his hair short, and he wore a suit and tie, and he improvised lyrics on the spot. Like that. Eric Brooks and Jerry Harrison were students at Harvard at this time. They replaced Anderson and Felice to form the Lovers Classic lineup. And this lineup achieved popular notoriety in the Boston area. Warner offered a contract. First demos got rave reviews from critic Lillian Roxon, who sensed a change in the air. In '72, the band traveled to Los Angeles to make more demos for Warner and A&M. These became the first Modern Lovers record. The band also played at Berkeley, and this resulted in a live album. Back in Massachusetts, the band moved in together in Cohasset, hard on the Massachusetts Bay and the Boston Harbor. New Year's Eve, Modern Lovers supported the New York Dolls at the Mercer Arts Center in Chelsea in Manhattan. And they had a gig in Bermuda, just materialized. Like, come on down to Bermuda, boys. Richman was influenced by steel pan, calypso, and reggae when he was down there. And then back in the studio, Richman was excited to try a new direction. The band was not amused at first and insisted they play in their original style. And the result was no new album. Then Warner bailed and Robinson left, and the band split in '74. Berserkly Records scrounged the failed demos from A&M and put out a record titled The Modern Lovers in 1976. The album included Roadrunner, She Cracked, and Pablo Picasso. Richmond was not pleased that the album was out. He preferred to recognize his Jonathan Richman as the Modern Lovers in 1976 as his debut. The first album was given a positive critical reception, and this Harder Edge collection of songs was the record that influenced punk rockers on both sides of the Atlantic, including the Sex Pistols. The new lineup featured Leroy Radcliffe on guitar, Greg Kieran on bass, and Dave Robinson returning on drums. Richmond insisted that Robinson reduce the size and volume of his drum kit, so Robinson quit. He was replaced by D Sharp, and 3 more albums were released. But then D Sharp died at the age of 39. Another lineup surfaced in 1980. They recorded Jonathan Sings in 1981, released in 1983. Critics liked it as well, but after the tour, the band split up once again. The final version of the Modern Lovers toured and recorded in 1985. Modern Lovers 88 was the last album, and Richmond retired the name. But he continued to perform, often solo with an acoustic guitar. John Cale, Iggy Pop, and David Bowie have all covered Pablo Picasso. The Sex Pistols covered Roadrunner, and so did Joan Jett. Echo and the Bunnymen covered She Cracked, and so did Susie and the Banshees. Here's a list of the albums that the Modern Lovers put out. In 71, the Modern Lovers, full of perfectly unique, original, and listenable and consistent songs. And I get it. It's the butterfly effect. In 72, the original Modern Lovers. So, just let him do whatever he wants, guys. In 76, Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers. And this is Calypso. And in 77, Rock and Roll with the Modern Lovers. But it's not exactly rock and roll. It's not exactly not. 79, Back in Your Life. Welcome back. 2 years later, Hi Ho Silver. I wonder, did Blondie cover the Modern Lovers? Something very Blondie-esque going on here. And then 4 years later, Jonathan Sings! Exclamation point. And then in 85, Rockin' and Romance. And in 86, It's Time for ... And the final record in 88, also titled Modern Lovers, with an 88 attached at the end. It's kind of fitting that punk was created by accident, because here's Jonathan Richman. They're just getting started, and he puts out some rough demos of his stuff. He goes to California and tries to make a real record, but gets caught up in the idea of going and playing down in the Caribbean. And when he's down here doing that, he gets the idea that Calypso music is very nice, and it is. It really is. I mean, it's not reggae yet, but Calypso music, something that the Kingston Trio made popular back in the 50s. And Jonathan Richman liked that. So he decided his band was going to play that way now. And that's okay. Because when he did so, the songs, of course, were great. But the rough recordings back in LA found their way into an album that got played on college radio. Here we go. And this ended up making its way to jolly old England. This is how the Sex Pistols got to see this stuff. And the albums were raw, but they were definitely very interesting. It's like Jonathan Richman was the one who pointed the way for all of punk and later hardcore, because he was doing music that wasn't technically great, and that meant anybody could go in the garage and do something pretty good, and enjoy, and people could enjoy it just as much as people enjoyed Jonathan Richman. And I finally found out how much I enjoyed him too. If he's out there anywhere, I just want to say thanks for what you did, even if it was by mistake. Thank you for being with me on Mid-Rock Crisis. If you're subscribed, hit like, and I'll see you next time. Everybody take real good care. Bye-bye for now.